Madam President, this week we start a brand new year and a new Congress and turn the page on a new chapter here in Washington, D.C. After 2 years with a single party, the Democratic Party controlling all levers of government, the American people voted for a change, for divided government. Now, sometimes you will hear that divided government is actually the best time to do hard things, and I think that's true. And I hope we will rise to the challenge with the divided government that the voters in the midterm elections gave us. But of course, now Republicans hold the majority, albeit slim, in the House of Representatives, where they will serve as a much-needed check on some of the governing strategy of our friends across the aisle. With the Republican House, Democrats will no longer be able to use budget reconciliation to circumvent the normal legislative process, and with it the reckless spending that has helped fuel inflation over the last 2 years. Instead, they'll have to work in earnest. They'll have to work with Republicans to find common ground and move legislation using the regular order. That's what the American people want. That's the verdict of the voters in the midterm elections. And I'm hopeful that we will embrace this new era of divided government to provide the opportunity to govern in a more responsible way. Now, the start of a new Congress is always bittersweet because you're saying goodbye to old friends, but you're also saying welcome to new friends. While we've had to say farewell to some truly top-notch colleagues who've retired at the end of the year, we're happy to welcome those new colleagues to the Senate. The Republican Conference officially welcomes 5 new members in our ranks today. Katie Britt from Alabama, Ted Budd from North Carolina, Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma, Eric Schmidt from Missouri, and J.D. Vance from Ohio. They have now gone from senators-elect to full-fledged United States senators, and I know how excited they are to get to work. Each of these new senators has run the gauntlet of a primary and general election campaign and has come to Washington with a fresh perspective and a long list of ideas about how to improve the lives of their constituents in their state. I've gotten to know each of these new colleagues over the past few months, and I'm eager to work with them here in the Senate. On the other side of the Capitol, there are new faces joining the Texas delegation. Given the explosive population growth in the state of Texas, now we've just reached the 30 million mark of people calling Texas home. We've added 2 new House seats this cycle, bringing the total House of Representatives to 38 from the state of Texas. Today, we officially welcome 5 new Texas Republicans to the House, and I'm likewise eager to work with each of them. During my time in this chamber, I've consistently fought to protect the rights of Texans and create more opportunities for every family to achieve the American dream. Despite the partisanship that has often gripped this chamber last Congress, we managed to actually accomplish quite a bit on behalf of the American people. We funded the CHIPS for America Act, which made an investment in our national security and economic competitiveness. We gave states and local government the flexibility to use excess COVID-19 relief funds on important infrastructure and disaster relief projects. And in the wake of the devastating shooting in Uvalde, we passed bipartisan legislation to strengthen mental health resources, improve school safety, and strengthen the background check system without impacting Second Amendment rights. And it's already producing well by saving lives, I believe. We'll hear more about that as time goes by. We sent more support to local law enforcement for mental health courts and crisis intervention teams, as well as critical de-escalation training. We made major strides in combating the scourge of human trafficking and other heinous crimes and helped improve our support for crime victims' survivors. These are just a few examples of bills that I introduced or co-sponsored that are now the law of the land. While I'm proud of everything that we've been able to accomplish on a bipartisan basis last Congress, we regrettably failed to address some of the biggest problems facing our country, starting with the border. Since President Biden took office, the southern border has been overwhelmed by unprecedented levels of migration. In the last 12 months alone, Border Patrol has encountered more than 2.5 million migrants along the U.S.-Mexico border. It used to be considered a crisis when the Border Patrol encountered more than 100,000 migrants in a single month, but over the last year, we've averaged more than double that every single month. It's a gross understatement to say that frontline officers and agents are overwhelmed. They can't keep up in terms of staffing, so Border Patrol has to leave the front lines to process asylum seekers, unaccompanied minors, and others. Meanwhile, the drug cartels move the drugs across the border that took the lives of 108,000 Americans last year alone. 71,000 of those 108,000 were from fentanyl or synthetic opioids, the precursors originating from Asia, principally China. Morale is at an all-time low, and it's no surprise. If you're a law enforcement officer sworn to enforce the laws of the land and you're told by your superiors you cannot because of poor policy choices, how would you expect morale to be anything else but low? These law enforcement officers, principally the Border Patrol, are frustrated that the administration is actively working to make their jobs harder, not easier. As we know, the Biden administration is trying to remove one of the tools needed for the Border Patrol to control the border, since they have yet to come up with a comprehensive plan, and that would be Title 42, the public health title that the Border Patrol is able to use to prevent this crisis and turning into a full-blown catastrophe. So, I know I sound like a broken record, but Congress must do something. Inaction is not an option. I've said over and over again that I'm willing to work with anyone, Republican, Democrat, or independent, who's serious about solving this border crisis. The presiding officer, the senator from Arizona, has been a great partner in this effort. Back in 2021, we introduced the Bipartisan Border Solutions Act to address some of the biggest strains on Border Patrol and our immigration court system. It is admittedly a modest bill, but I was naive enough to think that if things got bad enough, the Biden administration would be looking for a lifeline. And we had a bicameral, bipartisan bill that at least got the conversation started and would make things better if it was embraced and enacted into law. But despite the bill had bipartisan, bicameral support, the Senate Judiciary Committee refused to even hold a hearing. Let me say that again. Bipartisan, bicameral legislation with the border on fire, an unprecedented humanitarian and public security crisis, and the Senate Judiciary Committee chairman refused to even hold a hearing on the bill. In the meantime, the Biden administration has weakened or completely jettisoned policies that have checked the flow of irregular migration, and the crisis has grown even worse. And why wouldn't it? The Border Patrol, which are the experts that have taught me about what happens at the border in terms of the flow of migrants across, have educated me to the fact that there are both push factors and pull factors. The push factors being violence and poverty. We all understand that. The pull factors are the perception that there will be no consequences associated with illegally immigrating into the United States. The Biden administration is simply waving the white flag when it comes to any consequences associated with illegal immigration into the United States. Given the growing strain on frontline personnel in our immigration system as a whole, not to mention public safety, I hope the willful ignorance of this administration will come to an end. Hopefully with a new Congress, President Biden will reconsider, maybe even travel to the border and talk to the same experts that I've learned from when it comes to how we might do a better job to control the flow, not only of migrants, but also drugs across the border. But so far, the president has shown zero interest, as has the vice president, who he had named the border czar previously. They want to talk about root causes of illegal immigration as if that just emanated from Central America and Mexico. But the Border Patrol in Arizona and Texas will tell you that they are detaining people from as many as 150 different countries, which tells me that there are international human smuggling networks. And it's just a matter of money, whether you can get here from the Middle East, whether you can get here from Ukraine, or whether you can get here from the People's Republic of China. People of all those different nationalities and more have shown up at the border, which shows me it's not just about, quote, root causes in Central America or South America or Mexico for that reason. It won't surprise you that the border is one of the top concerns of the folks I represent in Texas, because we have a 1,200-mile common border with Mexico. We are ground zero of this border crisis. Meanwhile, the Biden administration this last year ushered through trillions of dollars in unnecessary partisan spending, adding to the inflation rates that are crushing middle-class families who are struggling to keep up with high prices, particularly at the grocery store. My constituents are also worried about crime in their communities and the ability to keep their families safe. Of course, businesses that employ, particularly small businesses that employ the vast majority of Americans, are facing the same inflation headwinds, compounded by supply chain struggles and ongoing labor shortage. These are some of the biggest challenges our country is facing, and I hope the Senate will take these problems seriously in this new Congress. Of course, these aren't Republican or Democrat issues. These aren't issues just facing red states or blue states alone. These are problems that are being faced by people across the country, and it's time for the new Congress to act with the seriousness and urgency that is required. I'm proud of the fact that I've consistently ranked as one of the most bipartisan senators, because I'm willing to work with anyone who wants to deliver change. That's been the case throughout my time here in the Senate, and it's not going to change now. So I'm eager to work together where we can. But I also will never hesitate to fight back against ill-conceived or downright dangerous proposals from some of our friends across the aisle. Calvin Coolidge, the President of the United States, former President of the United States, has said that one of the most important things a member of Congress can do is to stop bad legislation. And that remains true today. But that doesn't detract from the fact that where we can find common ground, we should work together in order to craft lasting, enduring, bipartisan legislation, not by abusing the rules of the Senate, but by working together to come up with good ideas that can command the vote of at least 60 senators, a majority in the House, and a presidential signature. So yes, we will continue to oppose radical policies that the American people overwhelmingly oppose. We won't allow the imposition of government mandates that will kill energy jobs or harm our energy security in an effort to reach unrealistic zero emissions deadlines. We won't let them hamstring our police officers with broad funding cuts or one-size-fits-all policies. And we won't allow the packing of the Supreme Court or the creation of 2 new states out of Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, so that Democrats get a permanent majority in the United States Senate by getting 2 senators each from each of those would-be new states. And we won't let our colleagues on the other side impose crippling tax hikes that will make it more difficult for hardworking Texans to put food on the table. So I trust that our colleagues got some good rest over the holidays, some time with friends and family, and we all look ahead to the need to do more work for the American people. We have big opportunities ahead of us, and I'm glad to be back and eager to get to work. On one final note, today marks more than the beginning of a new Congress. It also marks a major milestone for our colleague, Kentucky's senior senator. Today, Senator McConnell becomes the longest-serving Senate leader in American history. That's a big deal. No senator from either side has led their party as long as Leader McConnell. This milestone is no accident. As our colleagues on both sides of the aisle know, Senator McConnell has the most valuable combination of skills and temperament that you need to succeed in this chamber: an encyclopedic knowledge of the Senate and an infinite work ethic. For 16 years, he's put these skills to great use, leading our conference through every storm and opportunity that has landed on the Senate's doorstep. He's championed domestic priorities, including everything from tax reform to confirming judges who actually will enforce the Constitution as written, as well as legislation to address the opioid epidemic. He's guided our work relating to global conflicts, for everything from the ongoing war in Ukraine to the difficult struggle for democracy in Burma. He is a champion of free speech, the Constitution, and the Senate itself. You could write volumes about everything Senator McConnell has accomplished as a Senate Republican leader, and I have no doubt that each of those books would arrive at the same conclusion. No one has done more to advance the cause of conservatives in a center-right country than Mitch McConnell. He's the effective and humble hand at the helm of the conference, and it's a privilege to serve alongside him in the Senate. So thank you, Senator McConnell, for your leadership and your friendship. Congratulations on this historic and well-deserved accomplishment. Madam President, I yield the floor, and I would note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.